morning, Buttress Church. It's so good to be with you today. My name is Jono.
And I'm Corrie. We're really pleased to have you with us as we start the first in our new series called Naked Christmas.
We certainly are. We're feeling very festive here.
Yeah.
Tree's been up 2 weeks already.
Sure has. We've wrapped half the presents, would you say? Trying to get ahead.
Purchased them all though. Pretty good going.
Indeed.
So look, today we've got a talk from Reverend Andy Buttress coming very shortly. He's leading the talk this morning. We were so excited to see the Noel across Ipswich yesterday. I hope you guys saw it at home. It was a really good what Matt and Amy have done from St Augustine's Church. Now, has anyone had any or heard any great Christmas jokes this week? Have you?
Nope.
You haven't?
Not great jokes.
I've had 3 excellent jokes.
I'm sure.
Absolutely excellent.
Mm-hmm.
What did you get if you crossed Santa with a duck?
I don't know.
A Christmas quacker.
Oh,
Of course.
old.
Why did the turkey cross the road?
To get to the other side.
Because the chicken had a day off.
You said these were excellent.
They're poor, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'll save the best till last anyway.
Oh,
You know what the best Christmas present is?
Jesus.
Yes, of course. Of course. But for this joke,
Oh.
it's got to be a broken drum. You just can't beat it.
Oh dear. It's going to be a long December.
Sure is.
Shall we move swiftly on now to the first instalment of our new series, Naked Christmas. This week the theme is unstable. So over to Andy.
Good morning. We're going to be looking for the next couple of weeks at a theme which I've entitled Naked Christmas. Naked Christmas is working on an idea. And it is this, that even though this is a really difficult time with COVID leading up until Christmas and all the restrictions and the struggles that we're facing, could it just be that because we are going through struggles and difficulties at this particular time, like no other Advent, like no other Christmas, could it just be that we are in a better position to understand what that first Christmas was really like? With our Christmas being much more naked this year, without the trimmings and the trappings and, yes, some materialism, but perhaps not quite as much, are we able to kind of see under the surface, to see how things really were during that first Christmas, because we are in a place of perhaps Christmas being a little bit more laid bare this year? So that's the idea I'm working on, and this week we're going to look at the theme of instability, being unstable. And then next week, we're going to look at the theme of isolation and just seeing whether we have new and fresh insights into the Christmas story, particularly the lives of Mary and Joseph. So for a few minutes, let's begin to look at this subject of instability. Now, I don't know whether you've ever been on Zoom and you're talking to some people on Zoom, and there's a message flashed across the screen, and it says, "Your Wi-Fi is unstable." And you see this message, and before long, something happens. You are speaking, and everything freezes. And that is proof that your Wi-Fi is unstable. Either that, or you suddenly sound as if you are a dialect. That's the other option of having unstable Wi-Fi. So when something is unstable, it begins to kind of break down. it begins to become very unpredictable. That's kind of one of the meanings of instability, breaking down, becoming unpredictable. Maybe there's a second meaning. And here is a picture of the front of our house. Now, the front porch bit, basically the bit that stops you getting rained on when you stand waiting for us to open the door, this wooden structure is beginning to come away from the wall. It's becoming unstable. And as a result, some of the wall is actually coming away as well. So we've got these two big iron poles in front of our house supporting this porch structure because it is unstable. So here is another meaning, if you like, of the word unstable. It's about to collapse. When something is about to collapse, it's unstable. So we have about to collapse, unpredictable, not working properly. That's the kind of definition of instability. And maybe, just maybe, that's how you feel at the moment. That you're unstable, that you're a bit unpredictable, that you're not working properly, and you're about to collapse. And, well, unfortunately, that is how some people are feeling at the moment. And perhaps to a greater or lesser degree, that's how we're all feeling at the moment. Well, if that's the case, even just a little bit, maybe, as I say, we're in a position, even a better position, to look into the lives of Mary and Joseph in this Christmas story, because I want to suggest that they were in exactly this position. Their lives were unstable. There was a high degree of instability in their lives. So let's read a short passage from Luke's Gospel. And we're going to read from Luke chapter 2, verses 1 to 5. This is the early part of the Christmas story. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. So let's look at some of the things which cause this situation to be unstable. First of all, let's not forget that Mary and Joseph were Jews living under the occupation of the Roman Empire. Now, if you are listening to this and you are English living in England, just imagine what it would be like to be living under the occupation of, I don't know, let's say the French or the Russians or the Chinese. Let's say that England was taken over, was controlled by another nation. How would that make you feel? So even before we start in this story, Mary and Joseph are living in a situation which is quite unstable. They're living in their land, but they are occupied by the Romans. Here is a high degree of unpredictability. Who knows what the Romans will do next? So this was Mary and Joseph's situation. Coupled with this, Joseph has to go to Bethlehem to register in this census, and Mary goes with him. Now, they are living in a volatile time. Jesus was thought to have been born about 4 to 6 BC. Not the year naught, but 4 to 6 BC. And it's known that this particular time was a time of unrest in this whole area of Galilee and Judea. Let me give you a few examples of this unrest. First of all, we'll pick out the example of a man called Simon. Okay, now Simon he used to be a slave of Herod the Great, and he escaped and he set himself up as a king. And Simon was a great arsonist. He would go round setting fire to things, and including Herod's great palace in Jericho, which was burnt to the ground. Let me read you 1 or 2 things written about Simon of Perea. Okay, this writing is from Josephus, the Jewish historian. He burnt down the royal palace at Jericho and plundered what was left in it. He also set fire to many other of the king's houses in several places of the country, utterly destroying them, and permitted those that were with him to take what was left for them as prey. He was beheaded and his army slaughtered. Okay, that was Simon at this particular time. Another person or persons were Judas and Matthias, who were devout Jewish people, devout to the law of Moses, and they had a band of followers or disciples. And Judas and Matthias incited their followers to go to Jerusalem and to tear down from the temple gate this huge figure or statue, whatever you would call it, of an eagle. So this eagle had been erected on the temple gate by Herod the Great. But this eagle was the symbol of Roman power. And many Jews were affronted by this. You know, what's this symbol of Roman power doing on the temple gate? So the followers of Judas and Matthias went there, climbed up the temple gate, and completely destroyed this huge figure of this, Roman eagle, the symbol of Roman power. Well, they got caught and they were executed as well. And there were a number of outbreaks of violence at this particular time. You could call them terrorism, or you could call them heroicism. It depends on your outlook. Another one was a guy called Athrogenes, who was a shepherd, and he had 4 brothers. And again, he set himself up as a kind of king with 4 units, 4 kind of military type units. And he went around, and his brothers went around just simply murdering members of Herod's army and the Roman army in these kind of acts of violence. This was all happening at the time just after Jesus' birth. There was unrest in Judea. There was insurrection in the air. The whole area was like a powder keg, ready to kind of be lit by people who were out to overthrow the Roman Empire. So why I say this is that Mary and Joseph were travelling in these regions. They were going on a 60-mile donkey ride. I mean, this is not Children's Farm riding in a donkey type stuff, is it? This is an incredibly perilous and dangerous journey into the land of Judea. And this was dangerous. They were risking all sorts of things by taking this journey, but they had to go. So here is instability. Their situation was unstable. What would happen? Unpredictability. Would the whole thing collapse? Who knows? So we have perhaps a good insight into, because of our situation this year with COVID, exactly what was going on with Mary and Joseph. But let us also remember with Mary and Joseph their own personal situation. Mary was pregnant. Okay, she was heavily pregnant. She would give birth in a few days' time. They were undertaking this journey with Mary in such a condition. And of course, they could not be guaranteed that when they got to Bethlehem, they would find a double room in a Premier Inn. I mean, you know, there probably wasn't going to be anything, was there? It was a busy time. So Mary, heavily pregnant, with all the issues that go on with that, is undertaking this perilous journey. And not forgetting as well that they're not married. Now, in Jewish culture of the time, for a woman to be heavily pregnant outside of marriage was just, you know, stigmatized. That, you know, it was just frowned on hugely, you know, and they would have had to overcome that kind of situation as well in going to Bethlehem and registering. So there was that sense of almost feeling that they were, you know, unworthy second-class citizens, because of course people didn't know what the situation was, that Mary wasn't actually pregnant through Joseph, but that she had been visited by the Holy Spirit, and the child inside of her, Jesus, was conceived by the Holy Spirit. So let's just stop and try and get a grasp of how Mary and Joseph felt at that time. I'm sure they felt that things were not working out the way they wanted them to. What terrible timing this census was. You know, you couldn't have written it. Mary just ready to have a child, and she has to travel 60 miles on a donkey. Things were falling apart around them. They didn't know what was going to happen from one moment to the next. It felt like the whole thing was in a state of collapse. Just as perhaps we feel that there is so much instability at the moment that it's hard to think from one day to another. For some people, their businesses are in a state of collapse. For some people who perhaps are nurses or teachers or other professions which are incredibly busy at the moment, full of stress, some people feel in this state of collapse. Around us, things are not functioning properly. Even trying to get a doctor's appointment, you know, things are just not functioning properly to see the doctor. There's so much going on which we cannot predict. What tier are we going to be in a few weeks' time? What's going to happen after Christmas? So maybe as an individual, you feel that this is the worst possible timing for things to happen. You maybe feel this sense of instability, this uncertainty, and it doesn't feel great. But these are the feelings that Mary and Joseph would have had, perhaps tenfold at that particular time. So what can we learn from all of this? What can we learn from this passage, from this Christmas story, from Mary and Joseph, and from our own circumstances? Well, maybe I can suggest a couple of things we can learn from these things. And the first one is that God works in the instability. You know, God doesn't wait for things to get back to normal before he decides to carry on his plan. You know, God doesn't say, oh, well, we'll just put everything on hold until we get back to normal, and then we will carry on with my will. No, God works in the muddle, the mess, the difficulty, the struggle, the time of instability. He's there in the middle of it. In fact, it's often in times like this in which God works more. So with Mary and Joseph, you know, with this census, with this journey, okay, God is working in the middle of it and through it. And it is through it that some amazing things happen. Just read the rest of the Christmas story and you will know what amazing things happen. This is one of the most amazing things in human history, yet it happens in a time of instability. So be encouraged, because at this time of instability, it might just be that God will do something in your life that is amazing, and that he will use the circumstances to further what he wants to do with you. And same with Bridge Church. You know, maybe it is that God will not wait till things get back to normal in order to work and do surprising things in our midst. The second thing is this. For Mary and Joseph, they must have felt that, very stressed and the whole situation was beyond them. But I wonder whether Mary in particular just said to God, God, this is your problem. You have led me into this situation. I can't control the circumstances around me. So God, this is your problem. This is for you to work through. This is for you to solve and resolve. And I think sometimes when we're in situations like now, we can keep hold of the difficulty and the struggle as if it's only mine to try and resolve. But we have to hand back to God the situation. And we have to say, God, you have led me here. You've led us here. This is not a mistake in your sight. You know where we are. You've led us here. So from now on, it's your situation to resolve. We hand it back to you. This is for you, God, to lead us through. So maybe that's something that you need to do this morning, to hand back to God the situation that you're in, for him to help you resolve it, and to go before you and to lead the way through it. So, naked Christmas. When something is naked, we can see under the surface. We can see, if you like, the bare bones. We can see it as it really is. When we say seeing with the naked eye, we're saying, look, there's nothing else that is contributing to us seeing. It is as it is. We're seeing it as it is through our own eyesight. Well, through our own eyesight, and perhaps with the insights that God gives us, may we use this time to see Christmas as it really is. That first Christmas, stripped away of all the stuff that maybe gets in our way of seeing that first Christmas. Let us be open to the possibility that this Christmas we will see Christmas as it is truly meant to be.
Thank you so much for your talk this morning, Andy. That was really, really great. And I don't know about you at home, but I can certainly relate with the issues of instability of Wi-Fi, particularly over Zoom. Mm-hmm. Are you there? Can you hear me? That's what usually happens, right?
I was pretending to freeze that. Now we're going to go over to an interview where this week, or recently, Andy caught up with Jon Shaw, a member of Bridge Church, to hear about a project that Jon has been involved in.
Good morning, Jon. It's good to see you.
Hi.
Thanks for being willing to do this interview. Just for people who are not part of Bridge Church, so you're Jon. You're married to Melody. You're part of Bridge Church, and you're involved particularly in the sort of the website side of things, infrastructure, comms, heavily involved in the tech team as well. But you're also involved voluntarily in Ipswich Winter Night Shelter. Could you just give us an idea as to who they are and what they do?
So the Ipswich Night Shelter it operates in Ipswich over winter, and it provides shelter for homeless people during the worst of the winter months. So it started over 10 years ago, I think, with a group of churches getting together as a response to try and help people who were obviously facing hardship on the streets. And it's evolved quite a lot over time, but that was how it started.
Mm. Okay, so this evolution of the Ipswich Winter Night Shelter, can you just give us just an idea of where it was 10 years ago and what it looks like now?
So it started off with providing people that shelter overnight, and people would be with us for sort of like several months sometimes. But it was providing, providing shelter for them overnight. But each night they would have to, or each morning they'd gather their belongings and then, have to survive during the day and then return to the next evening. So it rotated around a number of different destinations. And over time, that's come from providing respite from the cold winter nights to actually providing support for the individuals so that their situation changes while they're in the shelter. So if they haven't got a bank account, which means they can't get benefits, or they've moved from one part of the country to another part of the country, then there's a lot of support for them to help them get all of that paperwork in order. And if you're struggling to survive in, not quite sure where your next meal's coming from, then filling in complex forms is something that you need support for. So while we're providing them with food and shelter, the guests are given the support that they need that's tailored to their individual circumstances. So it's a much richer offering to support people now, and the goal is really now to have people short term, so to give them a really intense burst of support and help them get back on their feet. So it is sheltering them, but it's now supporting them very much as well.
Yeah, that's really good, really good. So personally, how did you get involved, and how did that start, and what does your involvement look like now?
So I mean, the Bible talks an awful lot about helping the poor and needy, and I've always been challenged by that, and by you see people on the streets, beggars, and think, oh, how do I respond to that? Because I know that I should. But I work in IT, but what do I know about helping people on the street? So when the group of churches got together and provided an environment where support could happen, they needed people to make beds and make cups of tea and to be friendly. And I thought, well, I can do that. And over time, that's evolved. So I now help with the IT in the background and produce management reports and things like that to help with the efficient running of the shelter. But I'm still making cups of tea and welcoming people, helping with the bedding, and this year in COVID, doing an awful lot of cleaning. So yeah, it's evolved over time.
So obviously we're in a place now of COVID, all the restrictions that involves, coming up to Christmas as well. How do you see all of that having affected homelessness in general, in Ipswich, and how does that specifically maybe affect Ipswich Winter Night Shelter?
Well, I think homelessness, it's obviously been something the government was very concerned about, and there was a lot of support during the first lockdown and a lot of effort to get people off the streets, and it was sort of quite successful. So I think that there are still people who become homeless through financial crisis. They've lost their job, they can't maintain their payments, and things spiral out of control, a relationship breakdown. So there's still people who become homeless all the time, and so that's kind of an ever-present need to support people. And this year it's changed in that because of the virus, all the accommodation before had been in communal halls, and that's not really considered safe anymore to have people sharing a space who are kind of unrelated, and then mingling in the community afterwards. So now the night shelter has been working on for some time, getting a dedicated building, and that dedicated building has been fitted out with individual rooms, so that people don't have to go back to the street during the day, and it meets all the standards that statutory bodies require for a shared multi-occupancy building. So it's a very, very different setup now to camp beds in a church hall, but the key thing that's the same is that we welcome people, we support their immediate needs for shelter, for warmth, for food and drink and hospitality, but also providing that additional support to really transform their situation so that they're able to move on from the shelter quickly.
Excellent. So if anybody listening to this wants to get involved, or simply to find out more about the Ipswich Winter Night Shelter, what would you suggest? Where would you point them?
Well, recruitment for each year starts really over the summer months, because there's a lot of training to take on board. None of it's sort of rocket science, but it is being aware of the particularly this year, the things around infection control and so on. So certainly prayer. It's very challenging. The people that run the shelter do an absolutely amazing job, but it can be very difficult at times. And so support for them. They're always working so hard, and they need respite from that, and need to be able to take a step back without worrying about it. So that's probably the main thing at the moment. I know that Bridge have very generously offered to offer financial support, so that's terrific. I think we're buying a bed, and but see, so that's possibly people who've got some money, then that would be great. A small donation would go a long way. Because with a dedicated building, the costs have gone up considerably.
Well, John, that's a that's a brilliant overview. Thank you of Ipswich Winter Night Shelter and your involvement in it. And I hope that everybody listening feels inspired to pray and to consider their response to what you've just said. So thanks ever so much for giving your time and giving this interview this morning.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
You take care. Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks, John and Andy. It's really interesting to hear about the great work you've been up to, John.
It really is. Thank you so much. Well, guys, that sadly brings us towards the end of our time here this morning. We've got lots going on over Christmas, so make sure you keep up to date. But just to share some of the highlights, we'll be meeting as normal next Sunday, looking at the next in our series on Naked Christmas. What else have we got on?
Tomorrow night we have got the return of Bridge Pub, which is very exciting. So if you like a good old quiz, then please do join us on Zoom. It's going to be great fun.
It certainly is. We have got a family Christingle in 2 weeks' time. Which will be really great. Again, that's by Zoom.
Keep an eye out for that one. Christmas Eve itself, we've got Midnight Mass coming to you live from a living room somewhere.
Possibly somewhere in Ipswich.
Probably somewhere in Ipswich.
And we'll also be catching up together as a church on Christmas Day. But look, to find out more information on all of this, check out our website.
Loads of other things too that we've got going on as well that have forgotten about.
Check it out on our website and on Facebook.
Definitely. Do keep up to date. Don't miss out. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place.
Have a great week, guys.